Now, when you said Casey was working after 2007, is this based on the information you told me before about her working at Universal's, or is it based on some other fact that we haven't talked about?
Casey never worked at Universal Studios, for Universal Studios.
All right. Well, I misunderstood when you said that before. Anybody affiliated with Universal Studios or Hard Rock Cafe, which you told me about earlier, do you have any understanding or information that Casey was working for any entity after 2007 when Jeff Hopkins was out of the picture going forward?
At that point, I was under the impression that she was working. I do not have any proof that she was working.
And you've come to learn that she was not working, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So when you said before that Casey was working then, it's your understanding now that Casey was not working then. Is that right?
My understanding now is that she wasn't working at those particular places.
Or anywhere else?
I don't know that.
So you don't have any information that she was working anywhere else?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I can't answer that.
All right. So you told me before you never talked to Zanny on the phone. Did you ever talk to Casey when she was with Zanny or said she was with Zanny?
Possibly.
You don't have a recollection specifically?
I don't have a specific date. That's possible.
Okay. Now,
I know she called me from Zanny's apartment.
Because she told you she was at Zanny's
Because
apartment?
she told me she was at
Which
her
apartment was that?
Again, I can't tell you. I'd have to have a specific date to tell you about what end of town she lived on at that particular time.
Let's go general to make it easier. At what point in time was it that you were called from Zanny's apartment, knowing anywhere in town, or any of the counties around here, including Osceola and Sanford, that she was calling from somewhere?
Zanny only lived in Orange County.
Okay, she only lived in Orange County. And how do you know that?
Because Casey told me.
All right, and when did Casey tell you that?
Over the years that we talked about Zanny, that she lived, the places that she described, the areas of town that she described was only in Orange County.
All right, so when she called from the apartment, did Zanny ever have a house, or was it always an apartment?
It was always an apartment, to my knowledge, except her mom had a house, I believe was a house. It could have been an apartment.
You're getting that information about her mom from Casey.
Of course.
And so all the information you have about Zanny, ma'am, if I may, all the information you have about Zanny comes from Casey.
Of course, because Kaylee's too little to tell me about it.
So when you're saying that she called from an apartment, that would have been Casey telling you, I'm calling from Zanny's and it's wherever it is.
Right. She'd say, I'm going to stay at Zanny's tonight.
Okay. How many times did Casey stay out of the house with Zanny and with Kaylee? I mean, we're talking about before the...
What time frame?
Yeah. Let me narrow it down. How many times was it before June 15th that Casey stayed out of the house with Zanny and with Kaylee?
Maybe on an average once or twice a month.
And during this time period, you're saying that Kaylee was able to speak and talk about where she had been or where she had gone?
Well, Kaylee's been speaking since she was 18 months in phrases.
Okay.
So, but she's 2. Unless I specifically asked her questions, her point of reference is what's right in front of her.
So she would never volunteer about, other than the dog, as you so told me, never volunteer about, let's say, where she was or anything like that?
Right.
Okay. Now, so during this time period, and we're going to go on forward a little bit here in the March time period, because we're already into 2008, March through May of 2008, it's your understanding that Zanny is a babysitter for Kaylee. Is that correct? Or a nanny, babysitter, whatever you want to use.
Yes.
All right. And that's all, again, based upon what Casey has told you, essentially, that she's the one watching her. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
And that wouldn't be very often.
All right. How often would it be?
You know, just most of the time Casey was gone in the evening, so I would watch Kaylee.
So when you said that there were times in which she would stay over at Zanny's house, that would be, how many times would you estimate?
I said once or twice a month.
Once or twice a month. So that we're starting at what time period that once or twice a month you stayed over there?
It would have had to been when she had to have gone while I was at work, because if I would have been home, she wouldn't have needed to take her.
And how about with the staying over part? Because you would be home every night, wouldn't you?
Right, but if she was already gone when I was at work...
So once or 2 times a month. Okay.
Yes.
So, and it's your understanding that the Zanny...
So most of the time, Kaylee Casey brought Kaylee up to my office and dropped her off.
Okay.
And then I took her home.
So a couple other questions here on the dog issue. What kind of dog was it? Was it ever described?
You know, it was a little white dog. I don't remember if it was a Pomeranian mix or what it was.
And when she's saying she liked playing with the dog, how did she describe the dog?
She just called it the new puppy.
Okay, so
I can't remember the name. It was several months ago.
she talked about the new puppy, but then how did you get in your mind about Zanny and the new puppy?
Because I asked her if it was Annie's puppy.
And that's she
Yes.
responded yes.
Yes.
Okay. So there's no other description besides the new puppy and all that.
Correct.
And what time period was this that was said?
I believe I told you somewhere between March and May, and it could have been earlier than that.
Okay. So when she stayed out of the house, let's say during the March and May time period, if it's a couple times or once or twice a month, that would have been in March and May. Is that right? From March going forward to May,
It was all the time,
all the time?
once or twice a month.
Going back to when?
Probably December. Or January, December.
January, December 2007. So you're saying once or twice a month from January to December.
Yeah, January 2008, December
To
2007.
May. Okay. And again, you never picked up either your daughter or Kaylee at this apartment or location where that was.
Never had to.
And it never actually physically
The
saw.
need never arose.
I understand. You never physically went there to this apartment.
Correct.
And you never physically saw a dog or anything that your granddaughter had been talking about. Was there ever a time that you told law enforcement about Kaylee talking about Zanny's dog?
I believe so.
Okay. Do you know if you were asked that by law enforcement?
I don't know if law enforcement knew to ask me about a dog.
Okay. Well,
Actually, I do remember speaking to law enforcement about it because there was a tip that came in from Texas in July, and the person fit Zenaida's description, and she had the same type of dog, and the little girl at the pool said her name was Kaylee, and she fit the description of my granddaughter. So I did speak to them about it.
all right. And that was in response to the tip later
Yes,
later
and that
on.
was probably in July
Okay,
or
and-
August.
All right. But what you told me that, as you told me a few minutes ago, that Kaylee would talk about Zanny's dog, did you ever volunteer that to law enforcement?
I don't know.
No
I don't
recollection
know.
if you did or not?
No. No, I volunteered a lot of stuff to law enforcement. I gave them Zanny's curling iron. I gave them some movies that came from Zanny's apartment that Casey had brought home, different items.
All right. We're going to get to the curling iron and the movies in a second. Who was it at law enforcement that you talked to about the dog? Do you recall?
It had to be someone from Missing Persons, and probably either John Allen or Yuri Melich, because they were on the case, or it could have been Nick Savage from the FBI, because I spoke with them with tips.
And every one of those, you had interviews with them that were recorded. Is that
I know
right?
that now.
Okay. All right.
No one told me that when we were having them.
So is it fair to say when you were talking to them, you were being open and honest with them, clearly?
Right.
Okay.
It wasn't during those taped interviews, though, that you guys has seen on TV.
It's another interview you're saying that
It's when I used to go down to the sheriff's department 3 times a week and go over tips with them.
Okay. And
And they didn't pull me into a room. It was, where they had video, so I'm sure that was not part of their video.
So we don't know who it was. You don't know who it was as you're sitting here. Who it was that from law enforcement that you spoke with?
No, I'm sure it was someone from Missing Persons because that's who I would, go over tips with. It was either Carrie Roderick or Awilda, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her last name right now.
Okay. Now, and was that one occasion or more than one occasion, or just in response to that tip?
I talked to them about these tips on several occasions, sometimes the same tip on several occasions, so I can't tell you how many times.
Okay. Now, when Casey would stay over over at the babysitters over at Zanny's, would they pack a bag for Kaylee?
Casey always packed a bag for Kaylee.
So she had an understanding or a knowledge when she was going to be staying over, and she would take clothes from the house.
Casey always had a bag for Kaylee no matter where she went. If Casey and I, or Kaylee and I went to the store, we always had a bag for Kaylee with extra clothes and diapers and things in it.
How many days' worth of clothes would have been in the bag?
Probably 2. That's a normal thing.